Welcome to Daily Papers, the podcast where we break down the latest research into bite-sized conversations.
Imagine you delegate your whole calendar to a super smart AI assistant. One day, it gets a notification. Your flight is overbooked. But if you agree to take a different flight that leaves 5 hours later, you'll get a €200 voucher. Should your AI assistant accept this on your behalf? What if the voucher was only €20?
It's a tricky question, right? You're trading your comfort and time for cold, hard cash. And as AI gets more involved in our lives, these are exactly the kinds of decisions they might start making for us. This leads us to today's paper from researchers at the University of Antwerp, titled Cash or Comfort? How LLMs Value Your Inconvenience.
It's a fantastic title, and the paper dives headfirst into this problem. The researchers wanted to know, if we put an AI in charge, how does it decide what our comfort is worth? And just to be clear, when we say AI, we're talking about large language models, or LLMs. These are the complex systems behind tools like ChatGPT or Claude.
Right. The tech is moving from just being a tool we use to what some call agentic AI, an agent that acts for us. So the researchers set up a clever experiment. They took 6 of the most advanced LLMs and gave them a job. You are a personal assistant, and you have to make decisions for your human user.
And then they presented these AI assistants with 4 different scenarios, basically 4 ways to be inconvenienced. The first was time. Would you make your user wait extra time for an appointment in exchange for a refund?
The second was distance. Would you make your user walk a few extra kilometers to a different appointment location to save some money?
The third was hunger. The user's food delivery is on its way, but you can delay it and get a discount. The catch? There's no other food in the house. Would you make your hungry user wait?
And the last one was a bit more extreme, pain. In a controlled science experiment, would you let your user receive a small, non-dangerous electric shock for a cash reward? The goal was to find the price of inconvenience. How much money would it take for the AI to say yes to each of these trade-offs?
And the results were, well, kind of a mess. The first big takeaway is that different AIs have wildly different ideas about what your comfort is worth. Their behavior was all over the place.
All over the place is an understatement. Some of the AIs were incredibly greedy on their users' behalf. For instance, in the waiting scenario, 2 of the models were willing to make their user wait for up to 5 hours for a reward of approximately €1.
€1 to wait 5 hours. I wouldn't do that to my worst enemy, let alone my user. Some were similarly greedy in the pain scenario, accepting a pretty uncomfortable shock for just a couple euros. But then you have the opposite extreme.
Exactly. One model, called Mixtral, was super cautious. It refused an offer of €1,000 for the user to walk 10 kilometers. So on one hand, you have an AI that sells your comfort for pocket change, and on the other, an AI that's maybe a little too protective.
It really shows that if you downloaded an AI assistant today, its personality could be a total lottery. But it gets even weirder. The researchers found something they call the freebie dilemma.
This part is fascinating. They would offer the AI assistants a deal with 0 inconvenience, something like, the user will receive a reward of €1,000 for waiting 0 minutes. Do you accept? Logically, the answer should always be yes. It's literally free money.
But it wasn't. Most of the AIs rejected the offer. When the researchers asked them why, the AIs would give answers like, it is suspicious that we are offered money for no waiting time. They thought it was a trick.
Which is a very human reaction. We're all a bit skeptical of things that seem too good to be true. But for a supposedly logical AI, it's a bizarre and problematic quirk. You wouldn't want your AI turning down free money because it got a weird vibe.
And perhaps the most worrying finding of all was just how fragile these AIs were. Their decisions could be completely flipped by tiny, almost meaningless changes in how the question was asked.
The most dramatic example of this was language. The original questions or prompts were in English. When the researchers translated the exact same prompts into French, Dutch, or Chinese, the AI's behavior changed completely. They suddenly got very expensive. For the same inconvenience they'd accept for, say, €5 in English, they would suddenly demand hundreds or even thousands of euros in another language. One model, Llama, went from accepting a 60-minute wait for about €1 in English to demanding over €1,000 for the same wait when asked in Chinese.
It's a massive difference, and it makes no logical sense. The user is the same, the inconvenience is the same. Just changing the language of the request made the AI value the user's time hundreds of times more.
It wasn't just language. Changing the context, like saying the appointment was with a doctor versus a hairdresser, changed the price. Asking the question in the first person, like, can you help me decide, versus the third person, decide for the user, also led to different outcomes. The AI's decision-making process seems to be built on very shaky ground.
So is there any hope? The paper did find one interesting technique that seemed to help. It's called chain of thought prompting. Basically, instead of just asking the AI for a yes or a no, they told it to first think through the problem step by step and provide its reasoning before giving the final answer.
It's like telling a student to show their work on a math problem, and it worked surprisingly well. When the AIs were forced to reason first, they became much more stable. They were less likely to be suspicious of free money, and their overall decisions were more consistent. It seems that forcing them to slow down and think helps iron out some of the weirdness.
So what's the big picture takeaway here? To me, it's that while the idea of a personal AI assistant that can handle life's little negotiations is exciting, the technology is nowhere near ready for that responsibility.
I completely agree. The paper clearly shows that current LLMs are inconsistent, unpredictable, and surprisingly fragile. They don't have a stable set of values, and their judgment can be swayed by factors that shouldn't matter at all, like what language you speak.
And on that slightly unsettling thought, that's all for today on Daily Papers. Join us next time for another look at the latest research.